Okay, we're back again with the New Zealand Aviation Podcast. Record date for this podcast is Monday, June 24th. You got Paul Brennan in Auckland and
Martin Oakes, still in Brisbane.
Still in Brisbane for how much longer, though, I wonder?
Yeah, I wonder that too.
We'll find out.
I've got everything packed and ready to go, but still no contract. So.
Okay, well, you'll get there, I'm sure. You'll get it over the line, Martin.
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay, speaking of getting contracts over the line, I was, in the last podcast, fascinated what was going to happen at the Paris Air Show, which has just finished up at Le Bourget in Paris. And crikey, where do we start? I think we should start talking about the A321 XLR because we were sort of like really going on about that in the previous podcast, and kind of what we said we thought would happen it might have happened even more than we thought, actually.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, it's obviously found a hole in the market that people are quite willing to plug because, yeah, it was a pretty successful launch.
Yeah, very successful.
Yeah,
in the hundreds.
Yeah, and although a lot of them, as usual, a lot of them are orders, a lot of them are letters of intent and purchasing positions and everything. But yeah, it was a successful launch for what has got to be a minimal change aircraft for Airbus. They're going to beef up the landing gear. They're putting in a larger center wing tank. They're increasing the all-up weight to 101 tons, but apparently 105 is possible. And to get the full 4,700-mile range, you can add or even take out, although not that easily, extra center tanks. So it's got a modular tanking system, so you don't have to fly all that weight around if you're not using the full range.
Let's look at some of the numbers. 50 for American Airlines. I always thought that there would probably be a large American carrier order, probably for that Transcon, and also they'll be looking to into Europe from the East Coast or even further into the United States, the East Coast international services as well. But that's a big order. That would give Boeing a fright, wouldn't it?
Oh, I mean,
you'd think
Boeing won't be happy, but they don't have an answer. So I mean, they'll just have to grin and bear it,
IAG Group, we'll talk about them related to the MAX shortly, but they've gone for 14 to be spread around Aer Lingus, Iberia, and I guess BA.
Yeah.
What else? In fact, a whole bunch of carriers. Also, the A330 Neo doing quite well with Cebu Pacific, and what have they taken? Maybe 31 Airbus aircraft is in the total order. 16 A330-300s with, what do they say, 400 passenger capacity?
Yeah.
That's incredible, man.
460 or something crazy, isn't it?
Oh, that is crazy. That's more than the first 747s.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Just mad, eh?
And Virgin Atlantic are going for, I think, 14 as well. So that, I guess they'll roll over their current A330s, or are they expanding? I haven't read that bit.
So that's interesting. So Airbus didn't have a great show in terms of wide bodies. In fact, none of them really had a great show in terms of wide bodies. No A350s, although the CEO of Airbus came up and said, watch this space, there's orders on the way. He then also committed to knocking 20 mil off the price, which has also got to be pretty scary for the competition. Because if he said he's going to try and knock 20 million off the price, they are negotiating with customers now $20 million off the price. So that's very interesting.
So they see a need to. I mean, that's directly up against the 787, isn't it? Or is that encroaching into that new 777 sort of territory?
That's where I reckon they're going with that. Yeah. So no A350 orders, but the A330-900 did surprisingly well. So it looks like do up an old plane seems to hold its own in the market, because as a Boeing guy said in an interview I listened to, it was some time ago, he said, every A330 sold is a 787 we're not selling.
Right.
Yeah.
And also I see Airbus has sold a bunch of A220s as well.
They did well, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in terms of who else might be buying the 220, because there's you read the forums, whatever they're worth, there's a lot of rumors swirling there. We'll talk about that when we talk about the MAX and simulator training and all that type of thing.
Yeah, again, Delta, which is one of the customers that I think Boeing were desperate to stop buying this aircraft, they've ordered some more. So
they've topped up. Yeah,
90
JetBlue have ordered
all up.
JetBlue have ordered more.
Yeah,
a leasing airline took about 50.
Yeah, the what is it, NIC or NAC actually? It's like the old Nordic Aviation Capital. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Of course, yeah. So Qantas, IAG, AA.
Yes, Qantas. I saw that.
Yeah,
that's not normal for them.
No, but it lets them do. For Qantas, it's that A321 XLR is a really good plane because it lets them do Cairns, Japan, and things like this with as a route-proving aircraft. It's interesting, and as people keep saying, there's that guy Keith here in the forums who does a lot of the mock-ups of what planes are going to look like. He says, you're not far off another small stretch, a carbon wing. You got the A322, and you really have killed the 797 before it's even been launched.
And that I think is the most significant thing, because all that time Boeing have had the opportunity to, I mean, if they went with that program, it'd be done by now. They'd be selling those planes right now. That's the thing.
Boeing can't, I'm pretty sure they'll come back from this. Although in the past there have been situations where big companies have made one critical mistake, and it's knocked them off their perch, forever.
Well, how can you be more competitive? How can you make a product unless you come up with some new sort of world-beating way of designing airplanes? How can you beat this product at all? You can maybe compete with it with something similar on price. That's all. But unless it's a game changer, I mean, how are you going to do that?
Well, Boeing's got to bite the bullet. There's no point in talking about or trying to sell a short, stubby, twin-aisle, middle-of-the-market aircraft when the gap between an A321 Neo or a similar-sized aircraft and the smaller wide bodies, it's not really big enough. There's not enough planes you can sell into that market, really. Plus, you've got this extra structural weight of a twin-aisle. It's bigger, it's heavier. What Boeing have got to do is they've got to draw a line under the 797 should be the new 737 replacement line, and they've got to get onto it right now. And they can design one from an A220 size all the way up to an A325 if they want to, cover everything from 110 seats up to 260 in a narrow body, modern, new, innovative, clever. That's what they've got to be doing. Forget everything else, and forget the 737. Sell the ones you've ordered.
It's a goner.
Stop flogging it. It's a goner.
And just looking at the A321 XLR, it looks to me that it's still got capacity for a further stretch.
It does. It does. So there's drawings out there, as I said. You can up the weight another couple of tons, put a small stretch in it, put a new wing on it. It makes it even more efficient. And
for a fraction of the price of a new
fraction
type.
Of the price.
Fraction, absolute fraction.
So if Boeing do what they should do, which is go back to the drawing board and come up with a new family of aircraft for the narrow body range, that'll put Airbus on the back foot, and that's what they've got to do.
Yeah, but thing,
of course, who wants to go and put $15 billion down? Because somehow it costs that much these days.
But whatever that program is, new program from Boeing, it has to be, materially, demonstrably obvious that it's a game changer. Otherwise, the only limiting factor for Airbus is their ability to produce, because you can still make those changes way ahead of Boeing ever making a product, completing a product. Here's the other thing: they won't be using the 787 production method, production method for any new plane, will they? That seems like an orphaned cul-de-sac production method.
Yeah. There's two things. First of all, you've got to try and find a tube and wing solution which is innovative, which is I don't know, significantly different from what the competition is already doing. And you can't sit around and wait for the engine manufacturers to come up with, because both companies have been sort of just hoping for the engine manufacturers to come up with the next innovation so they can roll out an even cheaper to operate aircraft. No, they're going to have to come up with something really clever. And Boeing can. I mean, they've probably got to get rid of their current management, and they've got to lose their obsession with being a finance company or whatever they are. But I'm pretty sure there's hundreds of people at Boeing who get out their pencils and whip up a design pretty quickly. And we all know they can build them.
Yeah.
But it's sad. They've got to come back from this. But maybe they won't.
Well, there is a possibility that I haven't been following the orders. Has there been an across-the-board? Here's a question, and maybe we should. This should be obvious to us, but has there been an across-the-board order slump across all the product range for Boeing since this MAX thing? Has there been?
Well, there's been a bit of an order slump for everybody because there's apparently there's like 9,000 aircraft in the backlog. So they can't. Yes, but Boeing has had a bad.
Are they selling less planes? Are they selling less 777s? Are they selling less Dreamliners? Are they selling less 748 freighters? I don't know.
The orders at Paris could best be described for Boeing as top-up orders. They did get a big freighter conversion order for 737-800 freighters. People bought a couple of 777s. Korean took 14 787s, I believe. I think it's 14.
Right.
But nothing huge. No, nothing huge. And no new orders announced for the 777X apart from some talk of the delays because they can't get the performance out of the engine. Although yesterday I did watch a video of the new 777X taxiing.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh, that looks flash, doesn't it?
I was going to segue into that once you started talking about that. Yes, it's big. Boy, is it big. The wing is very 787. You can see the trailing edge flaps and everything. A great shape wing. I always like the shape of wings. And those engines, boy, they're big, aren't they?
They are big.
Those fans, crikey, straight on. They're
monstrous. Big. It'll be a very impressive plane. And
the wingtips, of course. And that looks like a very... I mean, I saw the prototype, though it had a different tip shape back in the, I think it was the 25th anniversary recently. Was it 25th or 20th of the 777's first flight, But they had originally a folding wing option for it, and that mechanism was sitting in a hangar that I saw at Everett. But it obviously had a different shaped tip. They never put it into production, but to see that hinge thing at work, I was trying to work out how, I guess the thing folds down and some sort of pin goes in and locks it all in place. Yeah,
you just wonder whether part of the certification test they have to take off with the tips folded up.
I probably do. It probably is possible. Yeah. But not one up on one side and one normal on the other, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so the orders haven't been great for Boeing, no, and until they get this MAX thing sorted out, I guess they got their plates full.
And I see also that Emirates has been negotiating over their 777X order. Did I read somewhere that they're thinking of maybe swapping those around for 787s?
There has been talk of that. I don't know whether it's an official report or something, but on airliners.net, some people were saying, they've heard rumors in the industry that Emirates wants to downsize the 777 into 787s, yeah.
Well, according to the Seattle Times, they often have this sort of reporting. Tim Clark said, who was laid up due to a virus, wasn't at the air show, but talking by phone. He said he's discussing with Boeing a combination of 150, crikey, 150 777Xs and the 40 787s, essentially looking to keep the numbers in place but substituting and spacing them out, over a longer timeline. Does that mean that Emirates is not running as hard as they used to be?
Well, that's the trouble with a growth strategy. Sooner or later, you're all growed up.
And then you've got to stay there.
I mean, they had to do it, but then you've got to try and stay there, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that part of the world, your prediction on overflights of Iran's kind of came true.
Yeah. Well, now the Iranians have been shooting stuff down, I guess it kind of makes sense.
Well, apparently they're 10 minutes away from war, and the Don said, "No."
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Okay, so it's been. I tell you what, I've enjoyed watching the video material from the Paris Air Show. It's been very good.
I haven't actually watched any of it, eh?
No, I've been watching everyday highlights, and some of the displays have been fantastic. The Airbus formation where they had, I think, the A330 tanker and the is it the Typhoon, the fighter? I can't remember.
I did watch the Rafale, the French.
Rafale, maybe, yeah. And what else do they have? Oh my God, that A400 can maneuver around, can't it?
Yeah, well, for that price, it should.
Well, they can barrel roll it. I know they can do that with the C-130, but man, it's pretty cool. And what was the other thing they had? There was it looked like an ATR, but I think it was one of those Casa planes that looked similar to an ATR that they had as a maritime sort of patrol thing.
Okay. Oh, that's one thing at the Paris Air Show. ATR announced and sold ATR 600 STOL version called the ATR 600S.
Oh.
ATR 72-600S, and it knocks 300 meters off the takeoff and landing distances.
Wow.
So, yeah, Caribbean islands and the Pacific probably.
Also
opens up a lot of airports to ATRs.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Very successful. Again, very successful product range. Been around for quite a while now, eh? About, 20 years or more?
Yeah, it's been around a long time.
Also, I see 15 billion was the figure put on sales at the most recent Paris Air Show. And they're saying a $4 million electric airplane stole the show. It's called what's it called? I'll tell you in just a moment.
What's the plane?
An airline called Cape Air has ordered the thing, and I'm just trying to find the name of the aircraft. I'm looking at the bloody headline and I can't even see the name of the aircraft.
I know the company. I remember it's called Aviation.
It's an Israeli company.
It's an Israeli company, yeah.
That's right, and it carries 9 passengers. It's got a surprisingly good quoted performance here, 650-mile range at 500 miles per hour with 3 electric motors on the tail and 1 on each wingtip. And the prototype...
I believe it's got a jet in it. It's a hybrid, so it's jet battery. So it's got a generator that runs in flight. But for takeoff and when it needs a lot more power, it takes power out of the battery, which is charged while it's flying.
It's a 900 kilowatt lithium-ion battery, about 9 times bigger than Tesla's largest automotive battery.
Put that in your car.
And I'm reading that from a website called QZ.com. So it just shows you they're on the way, and because they're so cheap to operate, it doesn't matter that the capacity's low.
Yes. It's actually pretty very interesting because so you've got a single engine. You've got a turbine in the thing, which is running the generators, which are powering the motors. But in the event that your turbine goes down, you've got a 900 kilowatt battery, which will at least direct you to a safer place to try and put it down.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
It is, and
apparently they're going to be less than $10 million.
Well, they're talking $4 million on the price tag of this one, but 650 miles. That's not bad. In New Zealand, you could do most sectors in the country. Well, the only one would probably be if you went all the way to Auckland to Invercargill, non-stop might be a stretch. But everything else, that is feasible, and at 500 miles per hour, that's the same travel time. So. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, isn't it, in the future?
And it's a tail dragger, which is just awesome.
And it's got the prop at the back.
Yes.
So
I don't know what engine out means if one of your little electric motors in the wing goes, because those propellers on the wings are way out there.
Well, I don't know. I guess there's software to compensate for asymmetric issues. Cape Air is the airline that's ordered the first commercial electric airplanes, and Cape Air is they make short hops. It says here, a perfect match for electric flights. They're saying
they're like a Great Barrier Airline. They fly from Martha's Vineyard and to Boston. It's a 20-minute flight or a 3.5-4 hour drive. So Barrier Island would be exactly the same thing.
Yeah, they complete hundreds of short flights each day, it says here. 92 planes currently in their fleet, serving about 500,000 passengers annually, making it one of the largest regional airlines in the US, it says. So I reckon it's really cool.
And it's got 3 engines, so Great Barrier would be well up with it because it's like the old Trilander.
Yeah, that's right. We used to fly Trilanders across Cook Strait. And they used to have a little sign in the cabin if you're sitting down towards the rear that said, flames coming from the engine is perfectly normal.
Oh, nice. Running a bit rich.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, so I'm really pleased to see that because I really honestly think that's going to be the future of aviation. The pressure
for some things, yeah.
Well, the pressure on environmental activism or demonstrating that you're environmentally friendly, and you can tell that the guns are being turned. They have been turned on aviation for a while. They say it's 2 to 3% of global emissions is the aviation industry. Considering what the aviation industry delivers, I would have thought that was a very low contribution.
Yeah. It's like these, and I'm looking into it now because it just seems so interesting. These tanker, these car transporters delivering electric cars to Europe, but the car transporter has put out more emission in that voyage than a boat full of petrol cars would have put out in a year.
I know.
Yeah,
but the fact that
it's very few ships produce a significant percentage of the global emissions.
Well,
apparently,
you can see that this is going to be a way of powering ships as well.
Yes, it will be eventually once the laws changes.
Aviation will lead the way, and I think that it's good that there is sort of, even though I love jet engines, there is pressure, and it will not go away for that industry to clean itself up, and that's the way to do it. And it may be that in the future, if you're flying, across the Pacific, let's say Auckland to LA, you might be flying an electric plane that's only carrying 40 or 50 people.
I guess if you didn't need a crew and a pilot, it'd be a long flight, though, wouldn't it?
Well, it's a long flight anyway, but the thing is, you might be able to. The cost of operating that aircraft can mean far smaller passenger loads. It's still making money.
Yeah, I mean a long flight in a very small plane.
Well, it depends, but you can see where it could go. That's my point.
There's opportunities there. There's stuff will happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a feature of the Paris Air Show as well. I want to flick before we talk to them about the MAX and things. Remember, I said you might see heads roll at Air New Zealand.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if his heads rolled, but I guess I wasn't that surprised to hear that Air New Zealand CEO Christopher Luxon had resigned.
Yeah, he's moving on. Yeah.
Yeah, but moving on from a job that's incredibly well paid to a job that isn't, you'd have to have burning political desire, to turn that one in.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think money is necessarily an issue. I think he did all right in the States, didn't he?
Well, maybe, but that's a prestigious job in New Zealand society. And you'd have to do your time in Parliament at least 2 terms. That's 8 years commitment of sort of hovering around on backbenches and getting to know the ropes before you even have any effective bite, unless somehow the whole thing's fast-tracked. You might go for, you've been the head of Air New Zealand. You'll probably have leadership ambitions, right? Watch out, Simon.
Possibly.
Watch out, Judith. Yeah. I don't know.
It'll be a long time before he gets there, wouldn't it?
Well, the airline was not doing too well.
No, time to move on.
Well, I don't think anyone had a problem with it. I mean, I don't know if the board was honestly saying, please stay.
No, unlikely.
Yeah. Anyway, so what does he say? He says I'm talking from the News Hub website here. I have absolutely loved the responsibility and experience of leading this company over the last 7 years. He said in a statement last Wednesday night, it's been intellectually challenging, people-centred, and an absolute privilege to do this job. However, I do feel it is the right time for a new leader to take over and preserve and enhance the good things from our past. He's only 48. Says he's going to refresh and recharge, then consider his career choices, which could include a switch to politics.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a bit of refreshing and recharging occasionally.
Yeah.
Some might say I do it all the time. Anyway, let's not go there.
Our customer centricity, commercial focus, and highly engaged culture. See, they think that when they look at themselves. But I think quite a few New Zealanders are kind of uncomfortable with that highly engaged culture. They don't feel it's sort of them, you know?
I'm cool with what they think they do. I'm just not cool with having to spend $1,000 more to fly Air New Zealand. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I'm doing this at the moment. I'm looking for flights to get overseas. And you go onto the Air New Zealand website, and I can fly... and I can book through the Air New Zealand website, and I can get to Europe with it's a Singapore Airlines flight, Auckland, bang, gets me there, and it's like $2,200. I think I looked a couple of days ago. It's $2,200. So okay, pretty good. And I think, oh well, you know, I want to fly Air New Zealand. Why do I want to fly Air New Zealand? Not entirely sure, but I'm on the Air New Zealand website, so they offer flights. Singapore Airlines, they offer. Which is fine. It's the Star Alliance partner. I can fly via Hong Kong with Cathay Pacific but they're not an alliance partner, so I get nothing. Can't even use the lounge, right? I can fly Air New Zealand to Japan and then British Airways to London. Again, not an alliance partner, so I can't use the lounge or anything. So yeah, first world problems. I get it, but why are they even pushing these flights? I understand that they push Singapore Airlines, but what they do is they push the Singapore Airlines flights, they push all their non-alliance partner flights, and down at the bottom, I guess I could change the sort order. I mean, I've never changed the sort order, but maybe that's something I could change. The Air New Zealand flights, and they're like $1,000 more expensive.
Yeah.
You're like, what's wrong here? Don't they want me to fly New Zealand? Well, maybe they don't.
That was the point I was making. When it comes to promoting that whole culture and everything, that's great. But it's a bit hard. It's a bit rich to see all that when you're that much over the market price. That's
the thing, yeah.
And that's what I think. That's my point on what I think people have disconnected from, and I think that's why they've been, finding it having headwinds, so called.
Cheery, nice staff, good, lovely people on the plane.
Yeah,
nice attitude, friendly, not worth $1,000.
No, that's right. And I think that you can tell that there's this belief in our culture and product is so slick and cool and Kiwi that people just, why would anyone choose not to? There's that sort of, that's the impression I get. But anyway, he's moving on. It'll be interesting to see if he makes a success out of a political career. I'm pretty sure which side of the fence he'll be on.
We'll see.
So anyway, let's get on to 737 MAX, and this thing just,
keeps on going, eh?
Where's it going to end? It's like down the rabbit hole, big time.
It is. I've got some. Over the last couple of days, I've been writing down a few things. I'll just go through them. So earlier in the week, you had, last week, you had Sully Sullenberg testifying before Congress. And
what did he say?
Well, he said a lot, but he said some. I took some points out of it. He thinks that upper body strength is an issue in the 737 MAX, and he also actually said he thinks the same would apply to the NG, but they're talking about the MAX.
Oh, there's thousands of NGs.
When you get a trim runaway, or you get an MCAS-induced trim runaway trim condition, to stop that trim wheel turning, it's 18 to 22 kilograms of force is required, 40 to 50 pounds.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're in a cockpit of a plane which is headed the wrong way. You got the stick shaker going off. You got the overspeed clacker, clack, 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 clack. You get the too low announcement coming through the thing, potentially, if you're too low. You're trying to find out what the hell's gone wrong, and you've got to find time to put your hand on the wheel and hold it with 18 to 22 kilograms of force. While holding onto controls, it's probably got a stick shaker activated.
Yeah, I've seen the. I haven't.
In 3 seconds. In 3 seconds, because that's the time window that the FAA mandated back in the day.
Crikey.
You should always have 3 seconds should be enough to react to any problem in the cockpit.
So I take it the original 7.3 models, this was okay. I've seen people, I've filmed in cockpits of 737s before. I've seen them using the manual trim wheel, when we were on number 1 737, just he was using it. And I noticed that you can really only use it with one arm as well. So it's hard to bring the strength of the other arm into it because of the awkward position of you in relation to it. It's no way is it ergonomic. So, now what does that mean for? Well, I don't know about male versus female.
Well, smaller people.
Smaller people then.
Yeah, it's a lot of force. So you're trying to fly the plane. There's all this noise going off in the cockpit, and 18 to 22 kilograms.
Yeah.
That's actually quite a lot with one hand. I mean,
and you could be pointing almost vertically down.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the trim cutoff switches on the yoke, right?
Yeah.
They don't cut off MCAS-induced trim runaways. So.
Oh God.
So there is. I'll put the link in the. I don't know where I'm going to put the link. I'll put it on the Podbean page, and I'll send it to you. You can put it on the YouTube.
I'll put it on the graphic. Yeah. So
Seattle Times has a fantastic in-depth sort of report on actually how MCAS came to be what it was. So basically, when it first started, one of the tests they do is it's like a winding turn. So they get the plane in a steep bank, they pull back the stick and fly it, just sweep it around really tightly and make sure that the control forces stay constant throughout this. So it's got a lot of, I guess it's centripetal force on it, and it's got quite a high angle attack because it's pulling itself around sideways. And the FAA and testing showed with Airbus that with Boeing showed that it didn't have a constant and smooth control feel. Oh. That's where the initial thinking behind MCAS came. So if you had an accelerometer and an angle of attack sensor, when certain values were met, it would just crank the nose down a little bit on the tail. It would just retrim the plane for you at 0.6 degrees per second from the trim flight level. That's all it was meant to do. It was just meant to gently bump, the nose down so that you had a smooth control feel.
Right.
So that was MCAS.
Yeah.
And everyone agreed it's really nothing. Don't worry about it. And it's 0.6 degrees per second, so it's not aggressive. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a maximum limit that's not allowed to be exceeded, and this limit is in 3 seconds. It really can't get the nose down far enough to cause a problem because 3 seconds is the law. You've got to be able to notice and respond to any issue in the cockpit within 3 seconds. That's the FAA. Probably from the old days when they were flying Spearmen around or something, right?
Yeah.
So then they noticed as the plane got developed and other issues crept in, there was also handling issues in slow flight. And then some bright spark came up with the idea, well, let's use MCAS, and we'll adjust the attitude of the aircraft using MCAS in slow flight. But for that, the only signal we need is from the angle of attack sensor. And so they bypassed the accelerometers and just used the angle of attack sensor. And then as they did more testing and as they got to understand the size of these engines and everything better, they increased the speed that MCAS operates from, I think it's 0.6 degrees per second from trim level flight to 2.5 degrees, which is half the adjustment.
Wow! In one go.
So it can go from and that's what's actually led to it. And this Seattle Times article is absolutely fantastic. It is really, really interesting, and you can kind of see how it's just sort of a logic. Oh no, we'll do this. But they never went back to first principles and said, well, why did we do this in the first place? And they managed to not tell anybody that this is where it starts getting a bit crazy. Was it just not thinking? Was it again? Well, I've reported it to them. Did they report it further down the line? It never got put into the handbooks. It never got into any training systems as such. And so you're left with a system which is relying on one sensor that when things go wrong, go very, very wrong quickly. The pilots had 3 seconds to respond. There's no hope in hell they had 3 seconds to respond. Those poor Ethiopian guys, they had the stick shaker, they had the low speed, they had the ground proximity, or not the too low, the whole thing was going off. The yoke didn't disconnect MCAS. It only disconnected the runaway trim. So the moment they let go of the yoke switch, poof, the MCAS kicked back in. It all just went to the hell in a handbasket. So that's interesting. So Sullenberger says, and I mean, this is not just his opinion. He obviously spoke to his community and everything. Upper body strength's an issue. This whole system needs to be explained. And in his mind, for any of those new Maxes, you need simulator training simply because they fly differently from the previous generation.
Yeah, that's not what they want. That's not what Boeing wants to hear. No way, they didn't want that at all.
And I'll tell you why Boeing don't want this at all. And it'll take about 3-4 minutes. So Southwest has about 7,000 pilots, right? So let's say they need 1 hour of simulator training, and the simulators run for 20 hours a day. Let's say they might run 24, but let's just call it 20. And in that 20-hour period, they can get 16 pilots through because it's going to be, 10 minutes to get in, an hour to do your training, 10 minutes to get out, a bit of a debrief, whatever. So that might be a bit optimistic. But let's say one simulator running for 20 hours a day can do 16 pilots. Well, if you've only got one simulator, that's going to take 437 days, 7 days a week, 20 hours a day. You're going to have multiple simulators. Well, this actually comes to the point. Does Southwest actually have any MAX simulators? So that might be a bit of a logistical problem coming up. You'd have to get your pilots to the bases. You'd have to get them through the system. So you're looking at a long time, right? Not to mention the time and the cost of you got to manage the simulators, you got to crew the simulators, you got to the simulator building's generally got quite a lot of staff, right? Yeah. Boeing's still not keen on the simulator idea because the quote from the Seattle Times story, and guys, you should really read this. They've had some fantastic articles in this. So, and I quote, "Early in the process of selling the MAX, according to 2 people familiar with the discussions, Boeing promised to give Southwest Airlines a substantial rebate for every plane if the MAX required simulator training. One former MAX worker, Rich Lutker, said the rebate reported to him by managers as $1 million per plane, a figure another Boeing employee indicated as roughly accurate. A Southwest spokesperson said, "We do not discuss publicly the specific details of our contractual agreements, but added that the purchase of an aircraft is a significant investment and guarantees for various items are incorporated into every 737 contract." So Southwest have got, 700. Eventually, they would have 600 or 700 Maxes. They'd get $1 million back for every one as it requires simulator training.
Geez, that's a lot
no
of
wonder
money.
Boeing's not keen on simulator training. And apparently the IAG deal for the 200 Maxes, the letter of intent that was signed, which we'll talk about later, that also includes a simulator training clause.
Well, this is why I speculated in the previous podcast that if maybe Boeing would have to stump up for new simulators as part of a rescue deal, because it seems that even the differences training that was done for NG to MAX pilots was done in NG simulators, right? Yes. So at that point, Boeing's getting perilously close to how do you deny that you might need a new type certificate, not type certificate, but a new endorsement for this plane if you actually have to roll out new simulators. The whole thing's been about avoiding the simulators. I can imagine how that whole enthusiasm for MCAS came about. Like you say, it starts off with a very simple proposition, and any alteration or input to the flight control system in that tight bank that you're talking about, probably a slight overbank situation, adjusted at, what did you say, 0.6 degrees of adjustment per input. I mean, that sounds fine. There's no problem with that. And when they obviously realized what effect there were aerodynamically from the engine-wing relationship, you can imagine in the office someone said, well, let's just use MCAS. Yeah. And people would have said, you're a genius, man. It's guys like you that this company, is all, and it becomes a positive feedback loop. The really dumb thing, the dumbest of all thing, is the vulnerability of the data coming into the system through one mechanized instrument that for some reason all of a sudden has become unreliable because look what happened within short space. I mean, maybe this sort of thing happens more often than not, and because there are two sensors and you haven't got a system relying on the input of one, which could go faulty and set you haywire, but I haven't heard of that much happening. That was what the straw that broke the camel's back is the vulnerability of the input data.
Yes, and apparently internally, if you read the Seattle Times article, internally people are like, what? You think angle of attack sensors don't go wrong? They go wrong a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
a lot.
Yeah, and no one said, "Oi, stop." Though it's interesting, moving on to another part of that story, that there is a class action lawsuit now that's been launched by, I think, over 400 or around 400 pilots, initiated by someone who's staying anonymous because they're scared of what it might do to their career and jobs. And this is for... loss of job opportunities, obviously for this grounding, everything that's happened, but also for literally putting their lives in danger.
Yes.
Man,
yes,
they'll probably win that, won't they?
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Also with the Southwest thing, Southwest are they're pretty ruthless. They're thinking, well, if we have to go and get all these simulators,
well, Boeing pays for them, of course.
Yeah, someone will pay for them and everything, but under pressure from their pilots, if the MAX is no longer flavor of the month, and this is somebody talking about this, is saying, wouldn't the A220 be ideal at Southwest? Now, the Southwest CEO said over his dead body, would they ever get an Airbus? But at the end of the day, he's there to make money. Right?
Well, it's not really an Airbus.
An Airbus-owned aircraft,
yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, he's got to make money. And if you watch those, you put me onto it actually, those the Air Baltic guys talking about how they're operating their A220s. I mean, they couldn't be happier.
They're going full.
Those are the original Bombardier ones.
Every plane, they're replacing every plane to be standardized on that type. Everything.
Yeah.
And it can do. I think one of the examples that was. Laid out is from I always forget the city they operate from, but all the way down into the Middle East with C Series, all with one product range. It's brilliant.
That's awesome, eh?
Yeah. So I wonder though, that class, just the constant news and cluster bleep nature of this. You've got the traveling, flying public are hearing all this. And yet they've still got to be convinced that it's going to be safe to fly on. Of course, it probably will be, but you know how perceptions can just overhang for a long time,
It'll definitely be safe to fly on. It's probably, it was only unsafe in very specific instances anyway.
Yeah, well, the media tend to sensationalize, and maybe we've been accused of this, though. I mean, this is just information that's out there. But you see the headlines, and they're quite dramatic, and people pick up on that, and they see it over and over again, and they form almost a subconscious view. It's hard to reprogram that.
We also get very, how do you say? Put it this way, an unmodified 737 MAX is probably a hell of a lot safer than any DC-10 that ever flew, right?
Or MD-11.
Yeah,
that's true. Well, this is the thing. The craziness of this is not so, MCAS system made perfect sense early on. It's a solution that when it's enthusiastically embraced as an eloquent dual solution. That positive feedback loop comes along, and it probably would have been all right if they had thought through the problems with their data input to it. And if it had...
Yeah, well, it just seems like a classic lack of oversight. That they, as one guy said, he said, we used to sit around, the flying pilots and the engineers used to sit around and have really, really hard discussions about what would happen. He says they don't do that anymore. Everything's done by committee. And that's what happened to the British car industry. They designed Austins by committees that never met.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, the colonies will take them. No, they won't.
Horrible things they were.
Yeah.
Anyway, now getting on to this IAG, it was early on headlined as an order, but it's not technically an order for 737 Maxes, is it?
It's a letter of intent. It'd be fascinating if we could actually ever find out what was actually in it. So, yeah, they've committed to take 200 Maxes out of the blue, just completely out of the blue. Airbus is a bit bent out of shape because they never got consulted. Ryanair is apparently really out of shape because they wouldn't have minded 200 cheap Maxes because they'll probably stick with the Max, or maybe not now. It's a letter of intent for 200 Maxes, and apparently the price is very, very, very low.
Right.
There's articles on a number of Fliegerfaust and Leham News has a bit about it. The price is low. The speculation, and it can only be conjecture and speculation at this point, that Boeing is going to hope to make money on the deal or not lose too much money on the deal by just services and support for the next 10, 15 years, if they take them. Now, apparently, there's also, how much training is required and everything, and that will also have an impact on the deal. It's the kind of deal that IAG can walk away from any time they feel like. There's no actual commitment there at this point. Interestingly enough, though, the week before, Boeing signed a deal to supply BA with A320 parts. Now, I'm not entirely sure how that works.
Oh, okay.
Like a lot of their A320 parts, like Boeing is going to manage their spares.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I suppose that's what you do, but I'm just wondering if those 200s, the 200 they're talking about, are some of what are sitting around at Renton and Boeing Field right now that may not be taken up by airlines.
Or there's unannounced cancellations, that Boeing have got to shift.
All right.
It's a terrible, terrible thing. Terrible thing.
I know. It's one of their most difficult problems for a long time. Hell of a long time. In fact, I can't think of anything that has been more of a problem than that in the history of their commercial airplanes anyway.
No. No, and it's what happens when you take your eye off the ball, you know.
There were a couple of early 727 crashes, but that was because that was pilot failure. That was low, slow, with a lot of drag, and they got into trouble. Procedures fixed that pretty soon, and there was the Electra nacelle problem.
There were the screw jack issues on the 733s. Remember, they lost Yeah,
or the rudder hard over. The rudder hard over problem.
About the time I was flying US Air 737s around America, which didn't do me any good.
That's right.
After that, I really did. There was another flight that flew via Ohio. I had to go to upstate New York a lot from Washington, D.C., and you could fly a different route to the same airline in Fokkers. So I started flying Fokkers after that, which was nicer anyway.
Okay. Yeah, well, because US Air had a whole fleet of them, didn't they?
Yeah, and they were great planes to fly. They were really nice.
Yeah.
So I used to quite vet my flights quite. I could fly via New York with a 757 up to New York, then a commuter liner over to upstate New York, or I could fly the wrong way to I forget where it was, and then with a Fokker, and then back to Washington D.C. in a Fokker. It was great.
I think they retired the whole fleet in one go, though, didn't they? The
they got rid of them,
100s, yeah. Speaking of 757s, I see there was a United Airlines flight sustained substantial damage. Forward fuselage hard landing at Newark Liberty International Airport on the 15th of June. I saw some pictures of it. The whole front fuselage has got a big crease in it.
Yeah.
Boy, it must have hit hard, eh?
Yes, must have hit very hard.
Yeah.
Big gash and creases, yeah.
So that's just another order potentially for the A321 XLR right there.
Yep.
They haven't announced. I would have thought that United, if American is taking them, United probably will.
They will. They'll be converting some of their existing orders. I mean, one of the interesting order changes that came out of that was AirAsia X. No, they didn't take the XLR, but AirAsia X has changed all 250 orders they've got for A320 Neos to A321 Neos.
Yeah, not surprised.
And I reckon a few of them will be XLRs.
Yeah. All right. So, do we have any other news from anywhere this week? I don't think so. I think that pretty well
not really.
covers
not
it.
Really.
Looking back on a bit of history here, you're going to hear this for the first time. The first flight this week, back in 46, June 25th to be exact, of the Northrop YB-35, the Flying Wing. My God.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking at a picture of it. I mean, even now it looks like something from the future.
Amazing, weren't they?
Yeah.
And that was with all analog flight controls too. You know, that was no fly-by-wire there, and he still managed to keep that guy still managed to fly them.
Yeah.
And the only reason they didn't win, because there was the 35, and I think later on it was the 48 that had jets, had a couple of jets on it.
Yeah, that's right.
And the only reason it didn't win one of the bomber competitions in the 50s was because it wandered slightly. It wasn't 100%, didn't fly in 100% straight line all the time.
Oh, okay.
And so, because they had manual bomb sights.
All right, so that had to, yeah.
It had to be very, very stable.
I think the model you're looking for, the YB-49, they were converted from 35 to 49. Yeah, turbojet engines, 8 turbojets.
Yeah, and what I like is Jack Northrop was apparently crushed when they didn't take any of his Flying Wings design. So he'd long since retired. And when they unveiled the first B2, or before the public even saw it, he was invited into the factory to say, "Listen, mate, you were right. Here it is."
Yeah. Wow.
And apparently he was very happy, and he died shortly thereafter.
He was, it says that when he got to look at the B2, he was in poor health that had left him unable to speak, but he reportedly wrote on a piece of paper, "Now I know why God has kept me alive for 25 years.
Yeah.
And it says he had no doubt feeling vindicated for his unyielding belief that his Flying Wing would one day become a reality.
I think they look awesome.
Oh, my God.
I just don't know how they stop flipping over all the time, though.
Yeah, how do they do that? The spec from the Air Force was a new bomber would have to have a maximum speed of 450 miles per hour, serve a ceiling of 45,000 feet, minimum 10,000 pounds of bombs, round-trip mission of 10,000 miles. That was the spec. Anyway.
Pretty good.
Okay, Berlin airlift began 26th of June, following the D-Day landings in France in 44. Of course, eventually the city was cut in half, and they supplied it by C-47s, or Strato cruisers, and DC-3s or Dakotas, and those Yorks, those Avro Yorks. Remember?
Yeah. I've read some. I've got a book about it's an old book about anecdotes about flying back in the day, and one of the stories is an RAF Dakota that was leaving the UK to fly to Berlin as part of the airlift, and they were taking aluminium runway, those sort of perforated strips to build an extension to one of the aprons.
Yeah. And
the loadmasters pointed at a heap and said, "Put them in." And so they filled up the plane with what were aluminium strips. And then the pilot says she was a bit sluggish, and he never got over 250 feet he said, luckily it's very low all the way to Berlin, because they were steel. They weren't aluminium.
Oh, right. Barely staying in the air.
Yeah, and he said it was a tribute to how they built the old DC-3, because the landing carriage, the landing gear held up on the landing.
Wow. Yeah, there'd be plenty of stories like that. They had insane cargo too, like coal and things like that. So yeah, that was a hell of a.
The Germans called them they're called the Rosinenbomber, the raisin bomber, because the Yanks used to throw stuff out of the plane on approach.
Oh, right, lollies and things,
and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I heard about that. Also, this actual day back in 1960, first flight of the Hawker Siddeley HS-748.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. 380 were produced between 61 and 88. They built the last one. That would, though, be the ATP, wouldn't it?
No, I think that would have, yeah.
Roughly 20 remain in service today.
Yeah.
Did a lot of flying around on those.
The Indians fly them, don't they?
Yeah,
the Indian
I think that they built them. I think they had a thing. So that's interesting. Of course, that airliner operated here as for Mount Cook. And the Eurocopter Squirrel first flight, 74.
Wow.
That's going back, isn't it?
Done. You know, when as a kid, my idea of what a helicopter looked like was a Bell Jet Ranger.
Right. Yeah.
In my head, that's what all helicopters look like. The Bell 47 was even then was old, the bubble one. So I thought the sort of height of sophistication in all things helicopter was the Bell Jet Ranger.
Right.
But now it's basically the Squirrel, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say. They're
everywhere. Or a Robinson.
Chances are, if you see a picture of like a smaller helicopter, it'll be a Squirrel. Indeed, even the one that flew into the building in New York a few weeks ago was a Squirrel, or A-Star as they call them over there. So, also,
I actually saw my first turbine Robinson the other day.
Okay, what was it? 44.
The R66.
Sorry, 66. Oh, okay. Well, that's the 44 with that's the model. With yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. I did a lot of flights in Squirrels. I used to do traffic reports for a radio station, so hundreds of flights in Squirrels. It's a very capable aircraft. And remember this: June 27th, 76, the hijacking of Air France Flight 139, A300. Departed Tel Aviv, Israel. 246 passengers flew to Athens. Hijackers secretly boarded the plane along with other passengers. After departing for Paris, the hijackers took over the plane. First flew it to Libya, then Entebbe, Uganda, and the rest is history. Remember, the Israelis came and rescued them.
They did.
And only recently, the captain of that plane died, and he was considered a hero because he stayed with them.
Yes, he didn't get out,
Yeah, but that was one hell of a rescue, and I think they came all the way in C-130s, didn't they, with the air-to-air refueling?
Cool.
Yeah, well, and people will remember that. I saw a movie on it once, not too long ago. It was brutal, absolutely brutal.
Yes.
What they did. Anyway, so that's looking back in the history. A quick Bring Our Birds Home update, Martin.
Yes.
I'm planning to travel to Brazil in about a month. Just waiting for those final days. Boy, this is for the faint-hearted. If you're used to things operating like clockwork, forget it. Just forget it. It ain't going to happen. But hopefully in Brazil within the month, doing the deals. And once that's done, going to the new level of fundraising. Looking forward to that. I've been talking to a TV current affairs show. There's some interest in following us on that journey or making a production from it, so we'll see how we go. That's good. So we're just got the new promo video out, so we just keep on pushing. That's where we're at. And who knows, within a month or so, we might have our first one,
There you go.
Just got to keep on trying, keep on pushing. So that brings that up to date. Do you think we've covered everything in for this week? How long have we been going? 59 minutes.
There you go. 59 minutes.
I think. You're about to head off somewhere. Tell you what, you talked about it the other day. I've been watching them on and off for a while. The Big Jet TV people. What do you think of that?
That's pretty good. Yeah, he's got a good following.
Yeah, I wonder though how long you can keep it interesting though, because it is kind of the same thing all the time, same planes and everything.
That's true, but he gets some really nice footage, and his commentary is pretty entertaining. So it's I think it's a bit of a background thing. You have it on. I mean, I know people who watch live cameras of railway crossings in America, and they leave it on for hours.
You reminded me once.
You guys know who I'm talking about, because one of them will probably be listening to this. It's desperately sad, but they love it.
Once I was on a steam train journey from Wellington to Palmerston North, and I was on there because a friend of mine was making a program out of this steam trip. He'd filmed the whole preparation, the engine, all these things. Anyway, so we're on this train, and I'm on there filming, going through the the 3 or 4 carriages. Yeah, maybe 5. Just getting shots of the people enjoying themselves, And I came across these 2 guys, older guy, probably in his mid-70s, and a guy maybe in his late 30s, father and son, right? and very enthusiastic. The son, who looked pretty geeky, had this thing dangling out the window with a wire hanging onto it. I thought, well, I've got to ask him. I said, what's that? He said it was a microphone. He says we couldn't hear the steam engine in the cabin, so he put a microphone out the window, and he had an earpiece going in his ear, and his dad had one going into his dad's ear, and they're sitting there listening to the train.
That's pretty cool.
I thought that's is dedication, cool. Man. That's taking your enthusiasm to a whole new level. You know, made me laugh.
Very cool.
Made me laugh.
Yeah, good
so that's the enthusiasm, the level of enthusiasm that can be generated in these things. Anyway, okay, so people watch those train crossings. Well, they sit there just waiting for the next one to come along.
Yeah. It's a camera stuck on the end of a platform or on a tree near a train crossing, and then every now and again, that's the 910 coal train through Wisconsin. Dear. Oh, isn't it awesome?
Oh man!
And no, it's not awesome. It's a worry. But hey, they enjoy it, and it's on a lot.
People watch Big Jet TV, I guess, for the same reason. So, but it's a great concept, and yes, if they keep the commentary entertaining, that's what keeps people sort of engaged. You know, so
yeah.
And I think they have live chat too, don't they? So you can make comments.
Yeah, they have live chat. Listen, I'd far rather the internet bandwidth was wasted on that than on level crossings in Ohio.
You can bet that some people are watching big TV and on another screen they've got the level crossings on.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
on multiple, so you can see there'll be famous crossings that everyone knows about. You know, in the sort of the bubble of interest.
Oh, I've actually seen a video online. Some American enthusiast he filmed. You know, as you come out of National Park Railway Station up in the centre of the North Island there.
Yep.
There's some loop that's quite famous.
Oh yeah, the Raurimu spiral.
There you go. And there's this guy on the YouTubes just going off about he's on the spiral and he's filming out the window and he's just like the happiest man you've ever heard. Good on him.
Yeah, doing it proud for them. One things I'm not into that I see quite a few of are these trip reports where people get on the plane and you look out the window and you see a few meals, and I mean they're not that interesting.
No, but
they can go on for like 6 hours, you know.
There again, I mean it's all very well to mock, but I like watching.
You might be.
I might be. I like watching videos of machinists machining like a gearbox shaft.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty dry viewing.
One thing that's nothing to do with anything mechanical or machine-like or anything like that, but I do like watching those while we're talking about this. These videos of people reacting, supposedly anyway, for the first time to music. Certain music, like Dark Side of the Moon or something, like a young person. It's fascinating to watch. There's a whole lot of new sort of formats. Well, it's possibly like watching the train crossing. I don't know. It depends. But all these new sort of classes of what you could call entertainment have come up. I guess, watching Big Jet TV is it's reality TV. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you couldn't get more real than that. I take it it's real time. If there's a crash, do they get it? I guess they do.
I have actually wondered about that, or is there a delay or something?
Yeah, I've always had ideas to put runway cameras in, looking right down the barrel of the runway, so you could watch departures and landings that way. Which not a bad idea, because usually they have lights and aerials, down the end there. You might be able to mount something on, but yeah.
What Big Jet TV has, he has great access.
Yeah, it's still a bit ropey. There's fences, bits in the way still.
Yeah.
What they need is to try and get on the roof of a vehicle or something, or get up a bit higher. One place would be good is to get cameras in the control tower. I remember going to the Miami control tower and filming out of there, and this thing's like 20 stories high, above the runway. And man, the perspective is incredible because the landing and taking off aircraft are below you, so you get a really amazing dimensional feel to everything,
Yeah.
But they won't let you do that.
No.
Too distracting.
Boring.
Too distracting. Yeah, aren't they boring? All right, so good to see those guys are getting. I've seen them with a few thousand views. They've probably done way better than that, but that's what I remember. Live at a time.
Oh yeah, no, he's getting lots of views. Yeah.
Yeah, and have you seen any obvious sponsorship?
No, I haven't actually.
There must be some. Surely someone's interested in that advertising.
I must admit, I haven't been paying attention.
Yeah, well, it's non-political, non-controversial, so it's probably not ever going to be demonetized.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, okay, so good to talk again. Maybe next time we talk, you'll be somewhere else.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, okay, well, good luck with that. Good luck with that, and we'll keep an eye on things that are happening. And we'll probably be back in about a week and a half, a fortnight, no later than a fortnight from now, with another episode. So, you've been listening to the New Zealand Aviation Podcast. Record date June 24th. That's Monday, 2019. In the meantime, it's goodbye from me, Paul Brennan in Auckland, and
Martin Oakes in Brisbane.
We'll see you later.
Cheers.